Alright everybody, we're going to try part 2 for how to eliminate SDR overload. In part 1 we kind of talked about what you need to have as far as equipment goes, just 2 antenna switches. I use 2 old school dial key relays and use them kind of together in a combination. And today I'll show you how to hook those up and how to get everything working. And this worked for me. I don't know how many other people have tried this method. I know at least one other person that tried this, and it worked for him. But you can try this. I'll show you how I've got mine hooked up, and it works perfectly fine for me. First off, of course, you're going to have your SDR dongle, which, like I said in the first video, mine is Noelec NE SDR Smart. It's about $35 on Amazon. You got that hooked up into your computer, running your software of choice. This particular software is HDSDR. Next, you'll have your pigtail coming out of the SDR dongle. That's going to be an SMA connector. I've got that running down behind the desk here. And then that comes right over to here to the front of the rack, just like that. So, I've got the rack kind of a mess as far as the wiring goes, but hey, it kind of gets the job done. At some point, I'll probably clean that up. Anyway, so that's the front of the rack, and I'll have to pull it out here, and I'll show you where everything hooks in. So, now we're at the back of the rack. This here is the pigtail that was on the SDR dongle at the beginning of the video. So, this is the end of it. And that hooks in right into this one. So this is your first antenna switch, or in this case, it's the old school dial key relay thing that we talked about in the first video. And that pigtail plugs in right here. And what this thing does is it takes this connector and switches it between this one and this one. So it's just like that. So between that one and that one right there. So when the coil is not activated, so when this thing doesn't switch, this connector is connected here. When you push the button and this thing activates, it switches this connector over to here. So that's the first step, is that when you start transmitting, the pigtail that's connected to the SDR dongle is switched over to an empty coax connector right here, and that provides a first layer of isolation. So then this pigtail here slides all the way up here, and we go right here to this one. So this is the little pigtail from the first antenna switch, and this box you could just as easily use an old school dial key relay or the MFJ switch box or whatever, but this particular one is a homemade antenna switch box, just because I was experimenting and stuff, and this one worked kind of halfway, but I needed that second one to make it all work. But it works in the same idea. This is your antenna switch, or your common, and it just switches that between the left and the right one right here. So this is your antenna. This is the pigtail that goes over to the other dial key relay down on the bottom of the rack. And then this one right here is the transmitter. So this one here goes to your Cobra 29, your Cobra 148, your RCI 2995, whatever radio that you're using, ICOM 7300, whatever it is, it goes right there. So that comes down and it goes right back in here. So when you push the button to transmit, it switches this connector from this one to this one. So it switches the antenna from your SDR to your transmitter, or your Cobra 148, ICOM, Ranger, whatever it is. So this is just your antenna. So that's where you'd hook that in. Or this you would put in For example, this is where you would put the jumper to go between your radio and the input of your amplifier. Do not put this after the amplifier. You put these before the amplifier. So this would go between the radio and the input of the amplifier. Very important. Do not put it afterwards. So you might ask how in the world you get this all to switch when you push the button. Well, the way I've got mine working is on a foot pedal. And that foot pedal goes over here to this spaghetti noodle conglomeration thing right here. And what that does is it switches my radio. So it does like, tells my radio to key up and do all that stuff. And it also does the switching for the first Dow key relay and the second one right here. And all that is controlled by the foot pedal plug right there. So that is also a home built thing. So you could do that many different ways, but you're probably going to have to find like some type of switch box or something. So, and then of course it also switches all my audio and stuff right there. So that's also what that is. But all that goes around like that right here is the output to the rack gear, which is all up in here, and it does basically everything that I need it to do. So instead of having multiple different switches that you need to flip at the same time, you just have one foot pedal that switches everything. Alright, so this is the front of the rack, and this is the front of the signal switcher for telling my radio to transmit, telling the relay to turn on, and telling this other relay to turn on. And the plugs that are on the back of this unit, one of them goes here and plugs in there, which that's what tells it to turn on and everything. The other one of the other white switches goes down there to the to that relay, so that's where that tells it to turn on and off. And then the other foot pedal plug that I showed earlier, that goes down here to the foot pedal. So everything is controlled by this. This is where everything happens. Again, this is, as far as I know, I don't know if anything is sold like this on the market or anything. I just built this myself to switch everything. But I'm sure, I believe I've seen something pretty similar to this built by BBI or something like that. But somebody like that could probably build it, or I don't know, I'll have to do some research and see if they actually offer something like this. I mean, if you have like a ham radio, which this is not just for CB radio, this is for ham radio, this is for anything like that. If you have a ham radio, it might be a little bit easier. There might be stuff on the market to do this type of thing, but I'll have to check to see if there was anything out there that is similar to what this does that is actually sold commercially. And then if you're asking what this is just a 24 volt power supply that feeds some of the relays that are inside of this, because all of this junk is just stuff I had laying around, and I put this together with just parts that I had. So some of the relays that are in here require 24 volts, and so that is what the job of this thing is to supply 24 volts DC to the relays that are inside of here. So anyway, that is kind of the gist of how everything is hooked up and how everything works. I think I'll have a part 3 here because there's a couple of more details in the software, at least for HD SDR. I mean, I'm pretty sure some of it crosses over to a lot of the other SDR softwares that are out there. I know for sure SDR Uno, but I'll have a part 3 to show that stuff and the details in there as far as making sure your settings are correct, and that way you can avoid other overload issues that may occur. So with that, I'll go ahead and say bye for now, and if you have any questions or want to know more information or anything like that, or you have recommendations, just let me know and I will be glad to answer any questions or comments that you have.